Hello everyone, so this is the follow-up video from the scanning, me looking at Excel spreadsheets, so it might be tricky to see on your phone. If you want to watch it on the computer, you'll probably look at it better. Hope you enjoy. If you do like it, please comment, really keen to know what you think of it, or like and subscribe to the channel for more. There's going to be a lot of variation of stuff on here to do with how we do the sheep. So firstly, I want to look at the ewes and how they've performed this year. It has been a slightly tricky year at tupping, and I'll go through that as we look at the figures. So here, how I do it is I have the age groups here, how old they are, and the year of birth obviously corresponds to that. I have the number of ewes in each age group that we tupped, and here you have them as a percentage of the flock. I also have, at tupping time, their body condition score, average, and their average weight, which is useful information to see if there was, something slightly wrong. And obviously, I think you can probably see here, or maybe you don't know our flock that well, but this is, there was about a fluke. Unfortunately, we didn't catch it at all, really. We took it very, very late, the tests, and their average weight has really dipped here. Because normally they'd be around 60, 61. So they're a couple of kilos off at least, and in some cases more, the odd cases, which were really affected badly by the fluke. And the condition score is obviously also is lower than we would like. So, you'd really want 3.1 on this, because obviously this is an average. So some of the better ones obviously bring up the average. Then we have here the scanning percentage of each of those age groups. We have how they performed last year. So if you look at this across the way, take the yearlings for example. You can see the yearlings this year, they scanned at 159%. I think it was actually 160, but I don't have all the data here. Their weight was 50 and the body condition score 3, and they're now quite a high percentage of what we put to the tup. And you can see that last year, obviously, they were ewe lambs, so they were down at 85%. So obviously, you would expect them to improve because you've culled out the poorer ones. And now, so that's 74% change, which is good. Also, it's worth noting that the yearlings this year, if you look at this cell, I'm going to do that, but if you look at the 159 here and the 154, the yearlings as an age group have improved. And that's because this year we did indeed take better care of the yearlings and the ewe lambs, which I think we can see has increased the performance. I do believe that the main reason for this dip here, so if we look across, each of these animals have dipped a certain amount. I suppose you could take into account because of the age of the animal. So you might go, as they're old, as they're knocking 8, they're obviously going to decrease their prolificacy. However, these lot here, especially these two age groups here, I think the dip there is mainly due to fluke, as I said, and slightly poor animals. It's interesting to see that here I've got the empty rate. I'm always very interested in empty rates because an empty animal is one that hasn't earned you any money. And here I feel that this looks quite good. We've got 23% less empties on there. You'd expect that. Again, going from ewe lambs to yearlings. Here, again, there's a reduction in empties. Again, you'd hope that. But, I mean, we are at very low levels there anyway. 1.6% is very good on that age group. So, obviously, they've improved hugely from yearlings to here, and I think that's because, and as I said before, it sort of highlights how I think we treated them badly last year. They were very, very, very wet, poor. We also had toxo, so that's a really good improvement in those animals. So I'm very pleased with that. Looking at the others, as I said, these aren't very pretty reading, but I put that down to the fluke, so we need to be a bit more on it next year. I do think we can improve that quite considerably. And here, this is marginal differences here. Obviously, their scan percent has improved greatly, which is fantastic, more fertile. but we have and a small reduction. So it's all good. That half is good performance, and the ewes obviously this year have not been so good. Down here we have the full flock performance. The full flock performance shows that actually this year on scanning they have improved overall. This is the total recorded, so we have 1,136 at the top. That's all our flock, and they scanned at 157, whereas last year it was 153. So it's a 4% increase. I haven't got last year's empties, apologies. Obviously this 88 and 7.7 is very high for a flock, but that includes the ewe lambs. So it's a bit irrelevant really, and that is irrelevant I think as well, because it's not really an improvement, because we've obviously got a lot more lambs now as a percentage in the younger animals, which is not, especially in the ewe lambs, which is not a good thing, because their survival rate is a lot lower, which is what you'd expect. So here we go, we've got, if you take the ewe lambs out, we're 6% down on the 919, that includes the yearlings. And if you take the yearlings and ewe lambs down, we're 10%. So that's 10% reduction in their scanning on the ewes. It says 614 here, and the eagle-eyed viewers of you who saw the video would see the card says 620. That's because there is some data that isn't quite clean enough, and I like to do this quickly, so if there's incorrect data or unfilled data, I just delete it and take the ones that we've got that are very, very good. So that's 614 in this case. So I don't know whether you agree with me on the ewes. That would be my rough summation, but this is how I interpret my figures. And then important other side to look at it now, once we've looked at the ewes, we will look at the rams. So maybe if I explain this a bit, here we have all the sires we used. This includes ram lambs. So if I organise this in the groups, A to Z, this shows a better picture. So here, these rams serve the yearlings, they're the Ys. These are all the ram lambs that we used this year, 8, and they went to groups of 77 ewes, and we're in for about 4 days, and then we have a day break, and then we put a different ram in. And through raddles and what have you, we know who served what. So this, those are the ram lambs, and although these numbers are lower here for what they've actually served, the ewe serves, they had 77 to go at, and this is what they did in 4 days. They marked as having tupped. These two are the returns, so everything that was served by the ram lambs in the first 4 days then went to the tup. So these were like, although it says 50 and 37 here they served, they had 100 or probably more, almost like 200 each to go at, but they had already been served by these lots. So these numbers here of you served are the ones that came again, and that they must have jumped, and they've been recorded. These ones are the tups that served the ewe lambs. So this is their single sire. They only had one go, unlike the others. So 55 were our groups. Each ewe lamb group is about 55 that we tupped at. Then these are the groups, the tups that were used, and they have about 70 each. These are the ewes. So with the ram lambs, when they didn't serve, these R1 and R2 then get put together into E1, E2 here. And so these are all the ones that didn't have a mark on them, that weren't tupped by the ram lambs, because we raddle the ram lambs for 4 days, so we know what they've served. Right, so how do I look at this data? And obviously it's very confusing and there's a lot of it. What I tend to do, the first thing I like to do is look at the empties, because I think that really jumps issues out at you. And when looking at these empties, you have to compare like for like. Obviously, these two here, these two rams, were 21 empties, so quite high, 38 and 35% empty in those 55. They were serving ewe lambs, so you expect a certain level of empties. However, if you compare them to the other two ewe lambs, so this one here and this one here, maybe if I highlight, well, I'll just highlight. So you can see here, this one on the 55 only had 5 empties, that's 9%, so that performed quite well. And this one did exceptionally well on empties, it only had 7%. So that strikes me as a certain difference between these tups. These two tups I will be looking at and probably not using again, as I don't feel that was a good enough performance. I think they should be closer to these ones. So those two highlighted, that's interesting. Then we go further down, we'll look at this one with yearlings. Again, you wouldn't expect them to be as good as the ewes. And if we scroll down again, another yearling here, 8%. So the yearlings aren't far off, 6 there. And obviously this one here performed exceptionally well on that group of yearlings. So he's a keeper. He's obviously quite keen. I mean, you could put it down to the ewes. So what I tend to do is also I like to cross-check. And I look at to see, so if we put them in, if we're looking at the yearlings again, let's just put them in yearling order. So if we've got the yearlings here, we can see that the ewes, just to be sure, they're all similar EBVs. Their body condition score was similar. Maybe this group was slightly poorer. But still 6 empty and 8 empty. It's quite high in my opinion. 5. So there's only one real outlier, I suppose. You could argue not too much difference apart from this one who's done very well. In terms of the RAM EBVs, you can see again all quite similar. Maybe the one that's done incredibly well, bizarrely, happens to have the lowest EBV. So maybe he's prolific, but his lambs won't be so good. Time will tell. We will see how they performed when we get to rearing, which is the key stage. But at this point, it is quite interesting to see how they performed. So I've highlighted those two with the ewe lambs that I'm not very keen on using again. What is interesting to see as well is if we look at I think the scanning is quite interesting to look at briefly. If you look at these outliers, and this is the ram lambs now, they're 2 ram lambs. So obviously you'd expect the ram lambs to be the highest because they had the most fertile animals, and it's only the ones that they actively tupped. They had a mark on them, so they have actually tupped them. So you'd expect them to be pretty close to, or if not, to be 100, like no empties. So these guys are high, but what is interesting is that if you look down, you look at the number they serve, they're high, but they've served very few. So I've got a theory on this, and I don't know whether it'd be interesting to see whether people agree or not. I wonder whether these two boys, they're better lovers. They're just better lovers, if you know what I mean. Because I think it suggests, in my mind, that they're spending more time with the ewes that they serve, and therefore missing other ones that come, or aren't as keen as actively looking. So they'll on the keen ones, they'll spend a lot of time, but they won't keep going round. So that's why their scanning is so high. And then as you go down the ram lambs, so these have all had the same time, they tend to, as they've served more ewes, the scanning goes lower. It might just be that there's more ewes, therefore, there's more likelihood of not serving the exceptional ones. But still, I still like the idea that, and here's, look, 36, that's good, and he's gone down to 172. And then we've got 33. So 33, 36, 37. You can see, I still think there's a sort of minor correlation there, but maybe it's just me. So I think the better love you are, the better scanning, but you don't hit as many ewes with that animal first time round. Now, what else would I say about this? It's interesting to look at maybe a final comment. I mean, I can spend hours going around the different things that I like to look at. Again, the ewe condition, let's have a look at smallest to largest. So did that affect the scanning? So obviously we've got the worst ones at the top here. Their scanning is down. So maybe that could be an issue. But no, because look, they're exceptional. So the average, so yeah, not really. I wouldn't say that it's made that much difference on those ones. Weight-wise, again, they were very light, that group, so maybe that, but he served quite a few. So again, it's tricky to tell, really, on the weights. Moving on quickly, last bit of info that I'd probably look at is this vet's comments. So I did take a risk, as I said, because we were short of tops on 2 of these uncertain ones, and it's interesting to see how they perform. So when you're, and also we did when you're electro-ejaculating, which is what we had to do with the ones that wouldn't necessarily tup, because I think if we look at the comments of the vets here, these two, what does it say, showed very little interest in use and didn't jump, but good seminal sample on the ejaculation, on the electro-ejaculation. And then there's, this one was uncertain, testicles on the small side and semen sample bit dilute with swirl of 3 to 4. Also leaner than others and dippy back. Yes, she didn't like that, looking a bit more like a Cotard in that one, I think. And here we go, we got this final one, smallest ram, not very interested in use and didn't jump, but testicles good size and felt fine. Electro-ejaculation collected, semen sample, bit watery but reasonable, 3 out of 5. So let's have a look at those ones. So if we go across, so here we go, here they are. Let's have a look how this one performed. So we can see that this one, he had the returns at Croft. So interestingly, it'd be interesting to see how he performed against the other one that had the returns. So he had all the ones that had been served by the ram lambs had been marked, and some of them were marked we weren't quite sure about, so we put them in with these guys as well. So as you can see, he has done a pretty good job. He had 200 in front of him, probably, but most of them had been served by the ram lambs, and he's missed 3. So not bad, scanning percentage of 176. So happy enough really with that. So it's interesting that he showed little interest but still managed to find 37. However, his compatriot, who we didn't do, but he's sort of tried and tested, he did actually find all of the ones that returned in his group, which were 50. So he did a lot better. He served them all, no empties, 174. So he did very well. Looking at the other one, let's have a look. This one, he went to yearlings, 6 empties. So he performed quite well on the empties on the yearlings because he did worse. Similar, and then there was that one outlier that did very well. So not too disappointed with him. Again, he was a bit leaner. Maybe that was the issue. Who knows? Could be anything really, couldn't it? But certainly uncertain there. And the scanning percentage, I suppose, is low but it's in line with the rest of the yearlings, 160. He is lower. So it could say that maybe that one, again, we highlighted, was a bit of a risk, but we were okay in the end, and we had no other option. So that's what we did. Showing very little interest, this one. It was a high BV one. So we did him. Oh yes, we looked at him already, the return. And then this one here, the final one, smallest ram. So she was a bit uncertain about him. He went to some U's and only 3 empty, so 4%, so in line with the average. Not the best, but not the worst it could have been. So yeah, so not too bad. So all in all, I am happy with the result based on, I think the U's had their issues with their weight and their condition due to fluke, so that didn't help. I think the younger animals performed very well on the year, so happy with that. Not so keen on these 2 tops. I think they've let us down the side down a bit, so we won't be using them to. We'll probably cull those 2 out. But otherwise, very good. I would be interested to know what other people do. Interested to hear in the comments if this is of interest or if it makes no sense, if other people have had similar tuppings, scannings. I do believe this year, from what I've heard, has been a trickier year for most people, so it might just be on the year that this reduction's happened in the use. We are effectively down in the use quite, 10% there. That's a large drop from last year, which in the most productive animals is not what you want to see. So so there it is. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on. The quick caveat to all this data, of course I'm not a vet, so please take vet's advice. It's very important. My analysis is purely based on the data and coming up with sort of ideas as and how it might, based on my experience. Your experience may be different and maybe in a different situation. So it is very much my opinion, not fact or scientific research with huge amounts of data behind it. It is just the data for my flock. But it's interesting nonetheless for me, and I hope it's interesting for you.